Welcome to His Word Heals. You can also visit us online at www.hiswordheals.com. In our last video, we looked at Alexander the Great, Donald Trump, and the notable horn of Daniel 8. This time we're going to compare Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar with Donald Trump and the notable horn, and then Nero and Vespasian with Antiochus Epiphanes IV and the little horn that comes out of the four divisions of the he-goat with the notable horns empire. If you have not watched our last video about Donald Trump, Alexander the Great, and the notable horn, go to www.hiswordheals.com and you can watch that video there. In review, I'm going to quickly read the relevant parts of Daniel 8, verses 21 through 26. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn or the notable horn that is between his eyes is the first king. And historically, it is accepted that Alexander the Great was this first king. Now, that being broken, whereas four stood up, four kingdoms shall stand out of the nation that Alexander the Great built, the empire that he built, but not in his power, because Alexander the Great died either by natural causes or by assassination, they're not sure. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgression are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And that's the little horn that comes out of the four horns that are the four divisions of the empire which Alexander the Great built and was divided among his four generals. Out of one of those divisions came Antiochus Epiphanes, and in the end times, this is speaking of the end times now, another king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So the equivalent of Antiochus Epiphanes IV. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power, and he shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. And the vision of the evening and the morning which was told is true. Wherefore shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So in addition to the notable horn on the he-goat and the little horn that comes out of one of the four divisions of the he-goat's empire, the historical fulfillment of that was Alexander the Great, and then his kingdom being split in four, and then Antiochus Epiphanes rising as the first anti-Messiah figure to persecute the Jewish nation out of one of those four divisions. But this is also speaking that it will happen again at the end. Yeshua also references it again when he speaks in the New Testament regarding the abomination of desolation. He essentially says that the visions of Daniel will happen again in the end. As we know, prophecy is circular and can happen again and again, having multiple fulfillments, one being in the very end, the ultimate one. But there, I believe, was also two other fulfillments to this after Alexander the Great and Antiochus Epiphanes. And that's what we're going to look at today. We have Julius Caesar and Augustus Caesar as two more notable horns coming out of a conquering empire that conquers from the west, followed by Nero, who persecuted and murdered the Christians, and then Vespasian, who destroyed the Second Temple, fulfilling the character of the little horn coming out of four divisions. And just as we compared Alexander the Great and the notable horn to Donald Trump in the last video, today we're going to compare Donald Trump to both Caesars. First, we're going to read excerpts from an article from imperiumromanum.pl. And the article is entitled Comparison of Caesar to Alexander the Great. And this is comparing Julius Caesar to Alexander the Great. This article says they were both supremely ambitious, warlike, rapid in executing their decisions, careless of danger, unsparing of their bodies, and believers not so much in strategy as in daring and good luck. Skipping down, in Europe, he, Alexander the Great, conquered much foreign territory and subdued the Greeks, who were a people extremely difficult to govern and fond of their independence, and believed that they had never obeyed anyone before him except Philip, his father, and that for only a short time on the pretext that he was their leader in a war. As for Asia, he overran virtually the whole of it, meaning Alexander the Great. To sum up Alexander's luck and energy in a sentence, he conquered the lands that he saw and died intent on tackling the rest. With regard to Caesar, he himself was impossible to terrify and was victorious at the end of every campaign by the use of force and conferment of favor, and much more surely than Sulla, and with a much stronger hand, he overcame the might of the Roman state, which already lorded it over land and sea from the far west to the river Euphrates, and he made himself king against the wishes of the Romans, even if he did not receive that title, and he died, like Alexander, planning fresh campaigns. The pair of them had armies, too, which were equally enthusiastic and devoted to them and resembled wild beasts when it came to battle, but were frequently difficult to manage and made quarrelsome by the hardships they endured. When their leaders were dead, the soldiers mourned them, missed them, and granted them divine honors in a similar way. Both men were well formed in body and of fine appearance. Each traced his lineage back to Zeus, the one being a descendant of Achaeus and Hercules, the other Anchises and Aphrodite. They were unusually ready to fight determined opponents, but very quick to offer settlement. They liked to pardon their captives, gave them help as well as pardon, and wanted nothing except simply to be supreme. To this extent, they can be closely compared. And as I read these comparisons, keep in the back of your mind, perhaps, Donald Trump, and see if anything sounds similar to any of his characteristics. Skipping down to the bottom, in the field of knowledge, they were also enthusiastic lovers of wisdom, whether traditional Greek or foreign. The Brahmins, who were considered to be the astrologers and wise men of the Indians, like the Magians among the Persians, were questioned by Alexander on the subject of Indian learning, and Caesar investigated Egyptian lore when he was in Egypt, establishing Cleopatra on the throne. As a result, he improved much in the civilian sphere at Rome and brought the year, which was still of variable length due to the occasional insertion of intercalary months, which were calculated according to the lunar calendar, into harmony with the course of the sun according to Egyptian observance. And of course, we are familiar with the Julian calendar. Our next article comes from Medium.com and is entitled Augustus versus Julius Caesar. So we compared just now Alexander the Great to Julius Caesar, the first Caesar. Now we're going to compare Julius Caesar with Augustus Caesar. And this article asks, who was the true Roman legend? The annals of ancient Rome are replete with legendary figures, but perhaps none shine as brightly as Julius Caesar and Augustus. These two titans of Roman history left indelible marks on the world, reshaping the course of the Roman Republic into the Roman Empire. The military genius, Julius Caesar, born in 100 BC, was a military virtuoso. His campaigns in Gaul, marked by brilliant tactical maneuvers and strategic prowess, expanded Rome's territory significantly. Caesar's unmatched charisma and political acumen allowed him to rise to the position of consul and eventually dictator perpetuo, dictator in perpetuity. His reforms, such as the Julian calendar, still influence our lives today. Augustus, the founding father of the empire, Gaius Octavius, later known as Augustus, was Julius Caesar's nephew and adopted son. After Caesar's assassination, Augustus emerged as a masterful statesman and military strategist. He defeated Caesar's assassins in a brutal civil war and became the first Roman emperor. Augustus ushered in the Pax Romana, a period of relative peace and stability that endured for centuries. Skipping down, administrative reforms. This is the legacy of Augustus Caesar. He overhauled the Roman bureaucracy, establishing a system of governance that laid the foundation for the efficient administration of the vast empire. Architectural marvels. Augustus initiated many building projects in Rome, including the Forum of Augustus and the Ara Paxis, leaving a lasting architectural legacy. Again, keep in mind Donald Trump in the back of your thoughts with regard to the Caesars. Conclusion. Julius Caesar and Augustus were both colossal figures in Roman history, each contributing in their unique ways. Julius Caesar's military conquests and political reforms left an enduring mark on the Roman Republic. In contrast, Augustus transformed the Republic into a lasting empire, ushering in an era of peace and prosperity. While Caesar was the catalyst for change, Augustus was the architect of Rome's transition from a republic to an empire. Both are true Roman legends, but the title of the ultimate legend must be shared between them, as their legacies are inseparable and their contributions are intertwined in the annals of history. Now let's read a bit about the rise and fall of the Roman Empire. This is an outline that I found at studenthandouts.com. In number 4, it says Rome under Augustus is called a golden age. Donald Trump says we're ushering in the golden age of America. Augustus attempted to reform public morals by promoting family life, which was largely unsuccessful. He began the practice of declaring emperor gods and of picking their own successors. He called Halley's Comet the spirit of Caesar, built and maintained the empire's infrastructure, encouraged the growth of business, established fire and police departments for Rome, established a strong money system, extended citizenship to more and more provincials, said he found Rome a city of bricks and left it a city of marble. Yeshua, or Jesus, the founder of Christianity, was born in the Roman province of Judea during the reign of Augustus. Then we see here after Augustus, then we see number 5 after Augustus or with Augustus is Pax Romana. That's the time of Roman peace. The next notable emperor after Augustus was Tiberius, then Caligula, then Claudius, and then the 4th one was Nero. So then again, there's 4 divisions after Augustus, and we have Nero rising out of the 4th one. He was considered a tyrant, came to power after his mother allegedly poisoned his predecessor, murdered his mother, his stepbrother, and 2 of his wives. He also killed his teacher, the famous philosopher Seneca. He had the fire in Rome, and he was accused of setting the fire and fiddling while the city burned. Nero blamed the fire on the new religious group known as the Christians, and we know that he killed many of them and set them on fire. So he was a form of anti-Messiah to the Christians. Then after Nero, who was number 10 in this outline, we have number 11, the year of 4 emperors. So after Nero, that very next year, they had 4 emperors. Nero's empire turned into 4 emperors in 1 year, the 4th one being Vespasian. And Vespasian built the Colosseum in Rome, a place where the gladiatorial combats were held. There was the first Jewish revolt under Vespasian, which resulted in the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem in the Roman province of Judea, and this was carried out by Vespasian's son, Titus. But even though this was carried out by his son, Titus, it happened under Vespasian, and Titus became the next emperor of Rome after Vespasian. And Vespasian was the 4th after Nero in 1 year. So we got a lot of 4s here. So if the 2 Caesars were the notable horn on the he-goat, following in the footsteps of Alexander the Great, then we have 2 sets of 4 divisions after that, one resulting in Nero, who persecuted the Christians and killed them, and the other one was Vespasian and his son Titus, who destroyed the Second Temple and killed many, many Jews, resulting in the dissolution of the nation of Israel and the complete diaspora of the Jewish people. Again, Nero, the anti-Messiah to the Christians, and Vespasian and his son Titus, the anti-Messiah to the Jews in Jerusalem. But the purpose of this message is to compare Donald Trump to the Caesars. And who is going to follow Donald Trump as the anti-Messiah, Little Horn, remains to be seen. Here's Politico.com. I'm not the only one thinking this. America is eerily retracing Rome's steps to a fall. Will it turn around before it's too late? 2,000 years ago, the famous republic had a chance to reject a dangerous populist. It failed, and the rest is history. Today, America, and this was back in November 3rd, 2020, so it says, today, Americans will choose between two radically different paths, a populist ideology transforming the values of the country itself, and an attempt to reject it. However unprecedented these times might feel, it's a decision as old as democracy itself. Over 2,000 years ago, the republic on which America was modeled faced the same choice. The Donald Trump of his day, Julius Caesar, promised to return Rome to an imagined ancient glory, or golden age, but instead constructed himself a throne, bulldozing democratic norms, ignoring checks on his power, and eroding political debate. Rome chose to follow Caesar, putting the famed republic on a glide path to destruction. Trump himself would undoubtedly relish any characterization as the American Caesar, but that comparison is more damning than he might like. Like Trump, Julius Caesar was already a celebrity when he took the highest office in Rome and despised by much of the ruling class. As a leader, questions were constantly raised about his fitness for office. Anyway, we see that this is probably written by someone who was an opponent of Donald Trump in the 2020 election. So all of these similarities could be exaggerated, but we definitely see some similarities here. Lastly, we're going to look at an article at DwightLongenecker.com, and he is Friar Dwight Longenecker, a Catholic priest, author, and speaker. This article is entitled Donald Trump and Julius Caesar, and it's a short article, so I'll probably read it all. On a recent visit to Italy, when I was tootling around the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, I took time to study some of the busts and statues of the ancient Romans, and there was one of Julius Caesar, who was famous for his comb-over hairdo. Sure enough, he was shown with a comb-over. It led me to remember the similarities between Julius Caesar and Donald J. Trump. First, both Rome and Washington, D.C. are built on a swamp. The situation in Rome when Caesar arrives on the scene is the republic is at the end of its lifespan. The wealthy patrician class ruled through a corrupt system of nepotism, privilege, wealth, power, and insider trading. The plebes, the working classes, soldiers, farmers, etc., were increasingly isolated. Julius Caesar was a man of the people who swept into power on a wave of popularity. The patrician elitists couldn't understand his appeal, and when he took control and put through reforms that favored the ordinary people, his power and popularity grew, and the elite conspired to bring him down. The similarities with Trump are interesting. Both were famous for their comb-overs. Does that matter? Not much. It just shows that both men had an element of rather pathetic vanity. Both men were extremely popular with the people but hated by the powerful elite. It is also true that both men were married 3 times, and both men were outsiders who turned out to be extremely shrewd politicians. Skipping down a bit, what I find most interesting are the parallels between both men and the context of their rise to power. The Roman Republic in the time of Caesar was corrupt and decaying. Already it had crumbled into the triumvirate with Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey ruling together. After Caesar's assassination, Rome descended into a civil war between the ruling elite and Caesar's forces. Out of that comes the beginning of the empire, with Julius Caesar's adopted son Octavian emerging as Augustus Caesar, the first real emperor. If history rhymes, then within the cycle of governments, republics are often followed by dictatorships. Why? The freedoms of the republic are squandered by those who abuse them and ignored by the diffident. Affluence brings lethargy, and individual license and self-indulging brings chaos. In a multiform and mobile society, people are divided. The people would prefer to have a strong man to take control, sort things out, clean things up, and achieve unity. Thus, Trump will fix it, quote unquote. Will Donald J. Trump emerge as a dictator? I don't think so. The Constitution limits his power, and I think he and his advisors know that they can't push things too far. However, should there be some crisis like a financial collapse, a terrorist attack, or a new war, Trump, like any president, could claim more, quote, executive powers. On the other hand, we should remember that most dictators are swept into power by the people. The people choose to be ruled by a strongman. The massive MAGA rallies that Trump holds are therefore a very interesting historical phenomenon. These are not your usual political rallies. They are hyper-patriotic and very focused on Trump the man. I can understand Americans' patriotic enthusiasm, but one should also watch those rallies carefully and see where they are leading. If history repeats itself, then we would expect Trump, like Caesar, to eventually stumble and fall and perhaps be assassinated. Indeed, this summer we know there were already 2 failed attempts. If history repeats itself, we would then see America go through some sort of civil war, out of which the first emperor emerges. If history continues to repeat itself, it would be a member of the Trump family. Who would that be? Donald Trump Jr., Eric Trump, Ivanka? My money's on Barron. I know, it's all speculation, but this post is a revised version of something I wrote 5 years ago, and sure enough, last week I saw on social media several memes jokingly promoting Barron as the first emperor. It's interesting to learn what Augustus Caesar's reign was actually like. Yes, he was the ultimate emperor-dictator, but in fact, he was actually a fair, good, and wise ruler. The republic had crumbled and an emperor had emerged, but Augustus ruled well. As the empire developed, the world experienced the Pax Romana, a period of peace brought about by Roman military dominance. It was the Pax Romana, among other factors, that created the environment in which Christianity could spread rapidly and successfully. Don't get me wrong, I'm not favoring a dictatorship or some great American empire, but if history does repeat itself, then the final wave of Christian missionary effort around the world might also coincide with the rise of an American empire and a global Pax Americana. And again, this article was by Friar Dwight Longenecker, Catholic priest, author, and speaker. And just for fun, I looked up Barron, Trump, and Caesar, and here's a couple of articles I found. Why are people comparing Barron Trump to Augustus Caesar? The bizarre trend of Trumpist Rome posting explained. And this is from knowyourmeme.com. Then from thedailymail.co.uk, the article, The Growing Cult Convinced Donald Trump's Son, Barron, is a time traveler destined to be America's Caesar. And last of all, from the FP.com, which is the free press, here's an article, Barron Trump, American Caesar, from May 1st, 2024. Donald Trump's 18-year-old son is going to save the nation according to the online right. The article is by River Page. Barron Trump is the future American Caesar. I'm told he is keeping a list of enemies so that he can one day avenge his father. I'm told that one day he will cross the Potomac with 10,000 men to dissolve the Senate. I'm told that he will do these things and become my God Emperor and yours because he is 6 feet 7 inches tall with an aquiline nose. According to memes from the very online right, Donald Trump's 18-year-old son is destined to save the nation. Skipping down, the article says, Barron would make a perfect Caesar, says the online right, because of his physiognomy. His eyes are what internet race scientists call A50s, a deep blue color reserved for philosophers, kings, explorers, and inventors, according to a chart somebody on 4chan made half a decade ago. Also, his profile looks a bit like a statue of Alexander the Great or someone on a Roman coin. And then there's his massive height. Others who aspire to power will always look like peasants next to him, notes one typical tweet. Neither Don Jr. nor Eric has a face you'd put on an ancient gold coin, but Barron does, and apart from that, we know nothing about him. Melania has protected his privacy so fiercely that he is a blank canvas, the very opposite of his petty, gaudy, vindictive, musical theater-loving, loudmouth father. Barron, meanwhile, seems to have inherited his mother's icy European stoicism, a rarity in America where political families are routinely forced to pretend to be happier and more middle class than they really are. Of Barron, we could ask the same questions. What does he want? What does he dream of? We don't know, so we can imagine that he is patiently plotting his takeover, the day when he will amass his army, cross the Potomac, quash his enemies, and then announce the commencement in Latin with a deep baritone voice of his 1,000-year dictatorial reign. All of this is very interesting to ponder, but only time will tell. We certainly do need to consider history, scripture, and current events all together and keep an eye on the times in which we live, as the tribe of Issachar did, so that Israel will know what we should do. Blessings and shalom to all of you and everyone in your home.